The most fundamental part of gel printing will be your rolling technique. Now, rolling paint onto the gel plate isn't the only way of applying paint. You can be wiping paint on. You can have paint on a palette and be wiping it on with catalyst blades and credit cards. You can be using a sponge to apply paint. But for this first exercise, I'm just going to talk you through the way we will apply our paint to the gel plate using a roller. So very basic stuff. Choose a roller to suit your gel plate. So there's no point using a 4-inch roller with a mini 3 by 5-inch gel plate. You may not have the luxury of different sizes, but if you do, it's quite hard to work a 8 by 10 gel plate with just a 2-inch roller. So as I said, it may not be something you've got a choice of if your budget has meant that you just keeping your supplies to a minimum. But if you do have a choice, select a roller that is best suited for your gel plate size. The next thing is the amount of paint you will put down on that plate, and that is something that will only come with experience. Then we talk about the direction of strokes, and so you may choose to have your gel plate portrait like I've got here, or turning it sidewards, and that is landscape. For the purposes of this particular exercise, I'm going to have it in the portrait position. It is taped to my table, so it's not going to move as I'm rolling and applying things to my gel plate. So the direction of strokes, so you will be rolling down, and then as we're working in the paint, going across and down. The amount of pressure you apply, so when you first put paint down and there's a fair bit of it, you really want to be working and spreading that paint and distributing it evenly over the full plate. And so you might apply a bit more pressure once you've got that paint across the plate. Then it's just fine-tuning that layer and also removing any lines that you've created from the edge of your brayer. And they will naturally form, but it's about, for me, it's about sort of minimizing that as much as possible. The next thing is whether you're going to just do one color or 2 colors, and then how those colors are being blended. I won't go into details here. We'll just do an example with just a 1 color paint layer. Then it's important to, I find, to clean your roller. So start each new color with a clean roller so that we're not getting muddy prints and muddy layers. Now, there are times when you break the rules and you want those, mixture of colors that's coming from perhaps wet paint on your roller and mixing it with another color. So rules are made to be broken, and that's one of them. Okay, so, and I do like to clean my roller between those layers. Keeping thin layers as much as possible. It's better to apply multiple thin layers than just one big thick layer. And that gives you more opportunity to build up colours and textures and patterns in your gel printing. Make sure your roller is dried well. So a wet roller will not react well with acrylic paint. It'll start beading and not covering your gel plate very well. So a clean, dry roller with your acrylic paint. Now, there's a couple of things you could roll all the way to the edge of the page, the plate, or if you are perhaps using a little 2-inch one, you can just create a little panel in the center there and not actually go all the way to the edge. So you can make a feature of all those rough roller lines around the edge. There are just so many ideas. We can't go through everything in this beginner course, and you know, there's just always new discoveries of how and why and new things to explore. So it is the most amazing medium to learn. I've already explained about trying to get rid of the braille lines. If you are working that paint for too long, the paint will start drying on the plate. And so that may be something that you like the effect of. But if you want to be stamping into it or working it, then it's best to be using it while it's still wet. And depending on where you live, the humidity and the temperature will affect the drying time of the paints you're working on. So that is just another factor in when you're rolling out your paint to consider. So let's put some of that into practice. I am using Matisse Flow in a transparent red oxide. In the next video, I'm going to go through just the very basic principles of gel printing. And one of those, I'll give you a bit of a clue, is working with transparent versus opaque paints and the layers on which you put them down. So the first principle is whatever you put down first will be uppermost. So if you imagine, and with a nice clear gel plate, you'll be able to see. So what I'm putting down now is the first thing that will show in my print. But I'm just showing you, and I'm just doing a small amount of paint. I tend to like doing a line rather than daubs. I feel it blends easier. And I'm just working that paint across the plate evenly. So you can see there's more paint still there, and I'm just sort of working that. And I'm trying to get it across the full plate down into these other areas. I can give that a little massage to distribute that early on. And you can see, let me just hold that up while it's still a bit wet. You can see braille lines, and you can see where the orange is a bit darker and a bit patchy. So I'm not going to take too long to show you that now, because I don't want to let the paint dry. It's summer here in Australia at the moment, so things are dry, and we've had a hot summer in Sydney, so things are drying quite quickly. And now I'm lightening my strokes. The paint is nice and evenly distributed. Lightening my strokes so that I'm trying to get rid of those braille lines, rubbing that off. And then I've got my copy paper here, and I'm holding that down on the edge there, smoothing it. And this is what I do with the right hand, so I've got holding up that right hand edge to get rid of. So again, the pressure you're applying there will depend on how much gets lifted. And there's our first print. So, you know, it's got some lines. It didn't print everything. It didn't pull everything, but that's okay. I'm going to do another layer on top there. I'm going to just let that small amount of orange dry and perhaps come back to that. We could print over that another time, but the braille lines are not too bad. But it did leave some paint behind in these interesting lines there. Okay, so let me pop that in water, and I happen to have a second roller. So I am now going to do that same, what will I use? I will use this time a little bit of, maybe I'll go yellow. So this way you might be able to see if some will come out. next time, as I'm rolling, that orange is still there, and it'll be interesting to see whether it picks up in the next roll. So again, I'm smoothing this out. This is Jo Sonja yellow oxide, and you can tell by the little round circle there that it is an opaque colour. And we're going to go into more detail about the difference that opaque and transparent paints make. So again, wiping that off, not wiping too much off because it will then make my paint layer too thin. So easing off the pressure, but not taking too long. Nice and very light strokes. And I'll get another sheet of copy paper. And so this is the absolute basics, just getting that good rolling technique, practicing that. Now, I lifted that orange one quickly and without drying, but I now have the option of drying that with a hairdryer, which I'm going to do. I'm going to pop this one also in water, and I'm going to get my hairdryer on to that. Okay, so that was just a burst with my hairdryer, not too hot, and I kept my eye on how hot it was. So now that paint is dry, and we'll see what is going to lift. It's stuck well and truly to the plate. I find the Jo Sonja paints quite good for that purpose of pulling prints. So that's picked up all the orange. It's just very subtle, but you can see some of the orange that was left by this print, which was pulled. I pulled this print just quickly while the paint was still wet. It did leave some lines here on the plate. They were very subtle. And then I applied the yellow paint, the opaque yellow paint, and then dried that with the hairdryer. And then by drying that paint, it meant that there was greater adhesion between the layers of paint and the paper and the substrate, which meant it all pulled off. So there's a few more principles for you to learn. That's just the very basic rolling technique of making sure that you're getting good amount of pressure, clean materials, clean rollers, drying them well, getting rid of your brayer lines, and working out the difference between drying and pulling wet, and the effect of the weather where you are.